Hey, this is Pastor Tom with North Glencoe Baptist Church, and you're watching Not Another Church Podcast. This is a weekly podcast featuring church staff and your host, Pastor Tom. So thanks for tuning in. The church is supposed to be where believing brothers and sisters come together and they literally become each other's family. Now, when I was a missionary in Central Asia, and that idea came home to me in a way that it never had in the Western world. And it was when I showed up, I didn't know the language very well, and so they couldn't use me for a lot of tasks because I didn't know how to talk. And when I did speak, I spoke like an idiot. So it's like, me go store good kind of thing. And so I'd gotten into toddler phase. And so the pastor of the church that we were working with, shadow pastoring with, would use me to, hey, I need you to go take Granny to the foot doctor, and then when you get done with that, I need you to go pick up Susie and take her to the grocery store. And this goes on for a week or so, and I'm a little offended. You know what? I've gone to seminary. I'm not your little fetch boy.
Pride.
No, of course it's pride. Yes. I mean, here I am God's chosen person. I am a missionary who left my country.
So you're not going to stack chairs.
Serve my Jesus, exactly. but I'm spending my time sitting around the podiatrist.
Yeah.
And Orhan, the pastor there, said to me, when these people became believers, their family literally had a funeral for them. Yeah. We are their family, which means that we have to do the things that the family would normally do, which is take Meemaw to the doctor, go buy some groceries and pick it up. And as all of that happened, it just washed over me. That's what the whole family discussion stuff is in the Bible. Because we don't live that here. I mean, let's be honest.
No, and I was thinking as you were talking and leading into the story, I thought that's because here in America, we don't do that. If someone becomes a Christian in a family of non-Christians, much of the time it's just like, oh, okay. Well, what church are you going to on Sunday? You know, and that's what they see, is it's a denomination or a church, local church body that they're going to participate in. We've missed the bigger picture of what worldwide, and especially first century, what it meant to be someone who was in the way, you know,
Absolutely.
Who was following.
So when we say church is like family, in much of the world, it really is just like family. Just like right now, if my mom were to call me in the middle of this show and say, hey, I need you to come do X, Y, Z, it's expected that I would get up and go do it because that's my mom. I got to do what she wants me to do, and Dad is sick and blah, 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 blah. We do that for each other as believers. And so we use the language, and when we're at our best, we actually see that played out. We've seen that in this church played out. The example that I have given in the past is we have a lady here in the church who was diagnosed with cancer, and as she underwent the chemotherapy, she had to be very careful about being around people with colds and sickness. She lost all of her hair, which never having been a lady, I don't know, but I understand that can have a huge psychological effect. And so her husband would bring her to church, not to come in this room, in the sanctuary. He would pull in behind the trailers and let her out so she could go into those ladies in her Sunday school classroom because they were family. And she needed them to surround her. She didn't need the show. In our church, not our church, North Glencoe, but in our church in the Western world, we think that church is the Sunday morning show. That's what church is.
Entertain me.
I mean, I think that's maybe taking it further than we actually think, but we want the production value to be quality. We want to hear a good, which is a lot of people leave the church that they grew up in to go to a church that's got a better show.
How many years have we joked about the fog machine?
Yes.
You know.
I want to take a fog machine so bad to camp. Sorry.
So at camp, y'all did not have a fog machine?
We didn't have a fog machine, no.
Yeah.
Did we tell you the story about do you remember when we were in Texas with the refugees? Mm-hmm. And they'd learned from us. So they're setting this worship service up, and we are in a borrowed hall in a borrowed church. and this church very graciously was allowing these Nepali refugees to have their church service in their fellowship hall, kind of a room. It's not a fancy room at all. But these guys had set up a drum machine, like drums. They had the electric drums. They were trying the hardest they could with like iPod worship and click tracks kind of a thing. And this dude, this little Nepali guy, whose job is to run the fog machine. And we're doing worship, and he's literally picked this fog machine up. That he got it like Party Town or something, right? Yeah. And he's trying to waft it around so that there's
$49.99.
Yes,
special.
exactly.
Yeah.
He's trying to get the fog going. He's got putting the drops in there, and he's making the fog. And then I get up to preach, and this fog machine's in cool down mode. So every 30 seconds or so, it would kind of go and just spit out this huge chunk of fog. And of course, where they sat, it was right behind where I'm trying to preach. Yes. And so I'm preaching in this Ascension-looking play, right?
Kind of like Pastor Tom's walking on the clouds.
Yes.
Yes.
And when I'm thinking, okay, it's finally cooled off. We're done now. There's no... and then,
Surely it's finished. Yeah.
So the show isn't what's important. It is important for us to come together. It is important for us to be in this room. But I do tell people, if you have to pick between... If you can only come to one, go to Sunday school. Because that's where you're going to develop relationships.
That's where you create those bonds. That's what we try to do with each one of those small groups, whether it's Wednesday night women's Bible study or even with the kids. One of the things that we're trying to help them to do is develop friendships. There's been more than once over the years that I have prayed for a child that I see that is not bonding well with other children for what it can be a multitude of reasons, but I have prayed repeatedly that they would have a child that would join them in some way and to create that bond and that friendship so that, when we're old and we're adults, that we can look back on those early childhood memories and we can realize how God was working in our lives even when we were 8, 9 years old, that God was already building a foundation for us, not only to learn from, but to love one another with, and to have experienced life, as a child growing up in church. Now we make jokes about flannel graphs and, even fog machines is becoming a running joke, but whatever youth camp it is, children's camp, but, we make jokes about all those things, but those are things that bond us to our faith that we have experienced together.
All right, with that, we end today's podcast. Thanks for watching Not Another Church Podcast with your host, Pastor Tom. We want to invite you to join us Sundays for small group at 9 a.m., worship services starting at 10 a.m., and you can find North Glencoe Baptist Church live each week on Facebook and our northglencoe.org website. If you miss church, no worries. Our past services are easily accessible. They're archived on YouTube, Vimeo, Facebook. Make sure to stay up to date by following northglencoe.org. Go serve your King.